Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Preston Radke, and today I'm going to talk to you about augmented reality games. Now, for those of you who don't know, augmented reality games, or ARGs, are games that feature the integration of audio and video components in a user's real time. Now, today we're going to focus on a specific augmented reality game, Niantic's Ingress. So, Ingress was launched in 2012 and has quickly become one of the most popular augmented reality games in the world. There are over 7 million different users of Ingress. So, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of Ingress is. We'll get into more specifics later on, but basically Ingress is a geolocation-based game where you have to go around your natural habitat and retrieve different control fields, portals, retrievables essentially, for your side. So, in doing all my research for Ingress, I obviously learned that this was a very fun and very interesting game, but my study of primary and secondary sources and my interviews with users, funders, designers yielded that it's not actually the game that draws people and keeps people coming back to Ingress. It's actually the social nature and the mobilization of the game that makes people come back. Okay, so we're going to first jump into history of augmented reality. So augmented reality, you might think, is relatively new. And, for how we look at it, it is kind of new. But actually, augmented reality goes all the way back to the 1960s. The first ever invention involving augmented reality was Mr. Morton Heilig's Sensorama back in 1961. The Sensorama was a self-contained machine that emitted certain sensory feelings to users. So these feelings were normally associated with weather. So it emit aromas, it could emit noises like thunder. Oddly enough, if you load it with water, you could even make it rain. So, like I said, that was the first augmented reality system, which involved different augmented reality components. But it really took a while for augmented reality to get kind of developed as we see it today. There were certain highlights in the 70s and 80s, but augmented reality really didn't come into shape until the early 90s. 1990 found the actual first coining of the term augmented reality by Mr. Toma Caldwell at Boeing. He developed a software that used augmented reality to help pilots arrange wiring on aircraft. Now, an even more important innovation in the story of augmented reality games is Mr. Louis Rosenberg's invention of virtual fixtures. So virtual fixtures are intangible, digitally based structures that can only be accessed by going to certain geographic locations. And as we will discover later on when we actually discuss the specifics of Ingress, virtual fixtures are quite important. So the early 2000s saw the first sort of innovations of augmented reality games. One that really comes to mind is Arquake, which is developed by the University of South Australia, which followed the story of kind of a sort of a SWAT team that tried to restore order after a massive earthquake. Another game that you will soon realize was an inspiration for Ingress was Spectrek, which was a game that was developed in the early 2000s, where users had to navigate around their surrounding areas to capture ghosts, and those ghosts were, of course, virtual fixtures. Okay, I told you about the history, and now I'm actually going to tell you the specifics of Ingress. So Ingress is played on a smartphone. It was originally developed for Androids, and then it was thankfully developed for iPhones. And when you launch the game, you are randomly assigned to one of two groups, the Enlightened Fight or the Resistance. So this game takes place in a dystopian future where the Enlightened Fight have taken over society, and they come with all these kind of tyrannical beliefs, these scientific innovations. They're trying to kind of make the world right in their mind, but the implication is they're not very nice people. And the Resistance are people that are obviously resisting the Enlightened Fight. But you have no way of picking which side, you're just randomly assigned. And to fight the opposing side, so if you're in resistance, to fight the inline fight, if you're in the inline fight, to fight the resistance, you have to retrieve portals or control fields. Or retrievables, basically. So retrievables are located in your surrounding area within about half a mile of where you are, roughly. They obviously can't be too specific there. And these are located at culturally significant areas. So if you're in a big city, they might be located at museums or baseball stadiums or parks or libraries, or you get the idea. They'd be located at culturally significant areas and areas that have lots of foot traffic, so lots of people in those areas, okay? So, you understand where they're found, but once you get to these locations, you have to point your phone at the location yourself, and then you realize what retrievable you stumbled across. So is this retrievable for grabs? Because if it's up for grabs, then you can claim it, and they'll be for your side. Your side will get points, so that's good. Or if it's for the other side, you know that you can't get that retrievable. But by kind of enacting that retrievable, it kind of helps nullify their control over that portal or control field, so that hopefully you weren't able to capture that portal, but maybe someone else will. So the game itself, if you look at the screen, it shows a map of the area around you for about 3 miles. So it's a pretty big area, but it's a very vague map. It will show you're depicted as a dot on screen, and it'll show streets, lines, and it'll show blocks just by blocked off roughly square areas, but it won't give you any specifics. Like it won't say street names, it won't say names of buildings or parks, but portals and retrievables will show up on screen by these little red markers. Okay, so you obviously can track your distance to these retrievables by following your dot on the streets. And once you get within a certain distance of these retrievables, the red dots, the markers, start getting lighter or darker based on how close you are. So if you want to use the example of, so I live in Chicago, so let's use the example of the Bean in Millennium Park. Everyone knows the Bean. So let's say the Bean is a retrievable location in your game. Now, if you're looking at the game, you obviously it doesn't say this is the Bean, go get this. It just shows a dot which denotes a retrievable. So you'll get closer to this retrievable, you'll realize that it's the Bean. And then as you're getting closer to the retrievable on screen, that dot will get darker. Once you get closer, you point your phone at the retrievable, and it will let you know what you got or didn't get. It's one thing to really remember about Ingress is it's not multiplayer, which means it's just very individualistic, but there's an embedded story. That's confusing. What I mean is, you don't actually compete against other people in the game. Sure, you compete against another faction or another side, but you don't actually see anyone else playing. You're not fighting someone in the game. You're not racing against someone to get a retrieval. You are, but you can't see that on the screen. And that really is kind of key, because it just kind of ratchets up the the need to get where you're going. It makes you walk faster, kind of lends itself to the whole physicality of the game. Okay, we're going to look at similar case studies now, so other games that are similar and different and may have inspired Ingress. So, I don't think we can do an ARG developed by Niantic case study without mentioning Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go, developed in 2016, also by Niantic, is probably the most popular ARG. Very quick crash course lesson on Pokemon Go. You capture and train Pokemon to face off against other people's Pokemon. Pokemon are randomly dropped, kind of nearby. There's a lot more Pokemon, though, than there are retrievals in Ingress. There are some similarities. They're both geolocation based. But that's kind of where it ends, actually. Because, obviously, like I just said, in Pokemon, you actually have to fight against people. In Ingress, you don't see anyone on screen. It's just you. Also, in Pokemon Go, the Pokemon are just essentially put anywhere. Like, they're not. There is no decision making to think, I think we should put this Pokemon near the Sears Tower because people should see that. It's just more, this seems like a good place for a Pokemon because it's kind of far from that other Pokemon, so we'll just put it here. So that's Pokemon Go. Another game that is somewhat similar is Temple Treasure Hunt. Temple Treasure Hunt is very similar to Ingress. You have to go to culturally significant areas and capture, well, their version of retrievables, and you get points, and you get to kind of climb throughout the game. The narrative in Temple Treasure Hunt isn't quite as embedded as in Ingress. There is an overlapping story, but Ingress, it's a lot more. You get to see reports on how many retrievals were captured today. You get to see status on who's winning between the Resistance and the Enlightened fight. But it's not quite as. Temple Treasure Hunt just isn't as all-encompassing as Ingress. So, I mentioned earlier the whole social aspect of Ingress, and that's very important because, like I said, Ingress really doesn't do anything to promote the socialization of their games, but in my research, I actually learned that there is a lot of collaboration between Ingress users. I interviewed someone out of Chicago who said that he would organize Ingress runs with people in his area. So let's say he was a Resistance man, and through social media and kind of networking, he was able to figure out different Resistance people in his area, and they would go out on a Saturday afternoon, block off sections of the city, so he may get like a 3 to 5 block radius. Another person may get another. You get it. And then they would just kind of own that area and just capture and interact with different retrievables. Then afterward, they would just meet up, kind of discuss what was going on, and just, basically get to know each other through the app, through the game. And then earlier I talked about the whole touristic side of things. I have to go find different cultural locations. One of the studies that I looked at actually it involved someone who was going on vacation to Greece a few years ago, and they actually used Ingress the game to help them see different locations, because in that area Ingress made sure to put lots of retrievables in historic areas, cultural areas that people wouldn't normally go to, even if they're going on vacation. And through use of this game, they're obviously able to have a good time. They're able to socialize with people in high traffic areas and play the game, but they were also able to see these historic areas. This person talked about how they got to see a very interesting Macedonian castle that they never knew existed, but because there were portals and retrievals there, they were able to. All right, so we are almost drawing to the end of this discussion. I guess it's just important to talk about the stakeholders. Ingress is a very, very popular game. The stakeholders, both design-wise and financially, are very wide-ranging. Lots of people in Niantic have a designer stakeholder in this game. Lots of other games have modeled themselves after Ingress. I know Paramafia has announced many times that they look to Ingress for innovation and new game iterations, essentially. From a financial standpoint, Google and Pokemon itself are big investors into Ingress, and they provide a lot of design input and just financial backing. Actually, interestingly enough, Ingress was originally a Google property, but a few years ago they broke away. So, in conclusion, we've talked about Ingress the game and how it's one of the leading ARGs out there, and how its touristic and social side of things has really made it a leader in the industry. And before I go, I mentioned Paramafia, but there are lots of other games that have really capitalized off of what Ingress has done. There are lots of different fitness-based games that have kind of taken the Ingress model of creating urgency through virtual fixtures to make people run faster. There are lots of running apps which you're running along, and then you either have to chase a virtual fixture to capture it, which makes you run faster, or you're being chased by different virtual fixtures, or if they capture you, something hypothetically bad happens to you. So, like I was saying, this is Ingress. Tourism, social aspect. Thank you so much. You should check it out. Thanks.